Gestalt principle at its core can be summarized: the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The Gestalt principle has its roots in psychology. It evolved in 1920s. It is a theory of visual perception that explains how the human brain organizes and interprets visual information. Why this a bit academic theory is so important in photography? Well, it tries to explain how the human brain works when it looks at an image. Hi, it's Peter here, and let's get right into the business. Street scenes are usually quite busy, and sometimes the images come out cluttered. According to Gestalt principle, our brain automatically tries to find structure and pattern and simplify and organize a complex image made by elements. How can we simplify and organize the things in an image so that it's pleasing and it's easier for the viewer to understand? Simplification and organization. And for example, in this image, I have organized the elements so that it's more pleasing and not too cluttered, even though the area is a bit cluttered. Having only those two little kids walking and the reflection makes it more simple. There were a lot of people walking around, but getting the right moment, we can isolate like this. And then usually when we're trying to simplify and organize things in an image inside the frame, we can group different people, have them separated. And if we have the people together, there might be some connection. And I will talk about that a bit later in the video. But here you can see the girl is doing something to, I don't know what she's doing, scratching her leg or whatever. And I thought it was a good image by itself, but I wasn't close enough. So I had to take the image like this. And I was lucky that there was this other group in the background that kind of makes the image. And also it raises a question that, okay, are there just a bunch of people that are just by chance walking there, or are they looking at the girl and maybe there is a connection or not? We don't know. You have to build the connection if there is one in your mind. And that's also one principle in Gestalt, that the mind kind of makes more towards the story, and that was that it's more of its sums. The elements in an image is more than just the elements. It's the interaction between the elements. And that's why I think this image is better with the people in the background, even though it's a little bit cluttered. So someone could argue that it's not very simplified scene of the whatever happened here. And then we have this image. Well, there were a lot of birds in the sky and a lot of people by the sea on this rainy weather in Lisbon a couple of years back. Having just two elements, which clearly have also a connection, but they're still two different elements with different story, or whatever you could say. The story of the guy here is that he's photographing the birds, and then you have that bird over there. So there is a connection too. But that's a very simple image, and getting a cluttered scene simplified by cropping it a bit tighter. And when I was picking out these images for this video, I realized that that's one reason that I like to use 40mm instead of, for example, 28. It's easier to simplify and organize things inside the frame. And this takes me to a thing that I should use wide angle a little bit more and learn to simplify and organize elements in an image with a wider angle lens. But that's going to be interesting. Once I get my cast on of my leg, I will try that and report you in a form of a video. And then we have this, which might first look a little bit cluttered, but as you look at the image, you have the people grouped, and you have several different groups, and there are a lot of stories in the image. I think it's also quite visually pleasing image too, which, is always something that we try or need to think about. You saw the three people in the left side of the image, and here they are grouped together, and also with the Gestalt principle, which I will talk a little bit later, is important not to do the cliches too much. This one is a little bit off the composition, but it still has the Gestalt principle with its simplicity and grouping the people together. And then the second one is figure and ground. It's very important that we can separate the subject from the background. This is a thing that we can do while we photograph, and this is also part of image editing, where we make the subject slightly lighter than the background, or we darken the background slightly so that we can separate the subject and simplify and make it more interesting so that we can lead the viewer's eye to the subject. so that there is no misinformation about or hesitation what the subject actually is, what has been photographed. And one thing is to place the subject on a brighter part of the image. And that's usually because that's where our eyes immediately goes. If it's sharp and it's on the brighter part of the image. And also separation with colors is something that you can do. And this example uses depth of field. And that's a very effective way. If you feel that that is your style to have slightly shallow depth of field, by all means do that. It's not something that I prefer, but sometimes it is very effective to get that figure and ground difference. And then this image with a longer shutter speed. This is also something that if the background is too cluttered, you can use long shutter speed to separate your subject from the background with motion blur. This is a very effective method too, and not that much used actually. I'm surprised that people don't use this that much. Have you used this method to separate your subject from the background? If you haven't, try it. And if you have, please tell us in the comments down below how do you find this way of separating the subject from the background. Desaturating the background with either image editing or desaturate comes from the fog that there was. It separates because the foreground is sharp and the background is slightly out of focus. And then the third one is leading the viewer's eye. This is a very common way of making the composition with using leading lines and stuff like that. You have lines that lead the viewer's eye to the subject, and when you lead the viewer's eye on the surface of an image, you make it easier to look at the image. Having leading lines, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's a very effective way of guiding the viewer's eye. This method is very effective to simplify and make the image easier to understand. But don't make it too easy. Make it something that is not too obvious, and that's how you make a compelling image. And you can also lead the viewer's eye by making people move towards the thing that you want to watch, like this image here from Lisbon 2 with the Poseidon mural by the sea near the harbor. And those people on the scooters kind of lead your way. They're going to the same direction as your eye when it comes into the image. Frame the subject, like this one, which is from Strasbourg. It's framed inside the rail or the ornament or whatever you call that in a balcony. And, it sometimes might take some time to do this technique. But it's a very effective way. And there is no question about where the person that's viewing the image is looking at. Fourth one is creating visual interest. This is a little bit similar to leading the viewer's eye because having something in the foreground or something that looks first a little bit odd will take the viewer's eye into the image, and then it starts to wander around and see what else is there. And adding a visual interest also is a kind of like a hook for the viewer to look at the image. He sees something and then immediately starts to look at the image. It's something that you will make the viewer to stop at the image if there is some visual interest in the image. If you only use visual interest and not apply it to other methods in Gestalt Principle, the image might be just a pretty image. And don't force it. This girl was taking an image of the church with her cell phone, and I had it in the front to make it more interesting. Just an image of the church. Yes, it's some travel shot and a memory, but it doesn't have the visual interest like this image. But we still see that it is inside a church. As you have probably noticed that all these methods that I'm talking here, they overlap. You have several things in the image, and the more you have them, most likely the more compelling the image will be and more engaging. And then one important thing is to convey relationships. As we were talking about earlier, that you can group the people so that they show some relations, and that boosts our imagination as a viewer. What is going on? What is going on with these two girls? What are they looking at? And what are these two? What is this guy looking when he's making the handshake with the friend, probably? And what is the relationship with the boy that has this yellow umbrella to the people in the background? I know what the relationship is, but you can make your own story about it. And what's the story here? This is really interesting because I don't know what was going on. And the story that you build in your head will make the image more compelling because we all have different stories for this type of images. We don't know what's going on. Is that the father-in-law of the guy, and they are just, talking about something, and the girl is a little bit worried. Is the guy asking the girl's hand or something like that? I don't know. It's an interesting image with a lot of possibilities in different stories. And I think this is a good example of the Gestalt principle in a way. And then the sixth one, emphasizing patterns and repetition. Having similar type of elements in an image several times also makes an image interesting. The person in the background adds to the image, and there is a bird in the front, so there's a diagonal line from the bird to the tables to the girl, and then there is a little color contrast, which is also something that is interesting to me. It's not inside the Gestalt principle in that sense that it's one of those building blocks in there. But as I said, we need to break the conventions a little bit to have something contradicting or something that makes the image more interesting. Having that, what I would call the Batman's cat, which is the thing that makes the image. But having similar objects, similar things repeating in the image or patterns will make the image more interesting. By understanding these principles will make your images a lot more compelling, and you will have some better composition in your images. And most of these things probably are something that you have already done. You already hopefully told us in the comments which ones. But still, I think it's a thing that you always have to remember when you're making the images and learn about this. And this first might sound it's too academic, but when you start applying this to your photographs, it comes naturally. It's the basics of composition. But as I've said many times in the video, that you need to have something that breaks the convention. So don't follow the rules like they are like laws. Just know them and then try to kind of like implement those into your own photographs, and you will get a lot better, because I think the composition is the most important thing. And here is some more videos about street photographs. But hey, thanks for watching, and bye for now.